Well, I think the next speaker does not really require an introduction because, let's say, he caused something in 1995 that we are all aware of today. In 1995, the original publication on Scrum came out. It was an OOPSLA, that's the Object-Oriented Programming Languages Conference. So it's really a tech conference. That's where the first publication on Scrum was, and it takes a while, but now you see, let's say, all companies looking at Agile, in the majority taking up Scrum, and that's why we're all here, and that's why we have the first Scrum Day Europe today. But the program is there, it's listed outside. Ken will do the first opening keynote. Let me see, he was also one of the signatories of the Agile Manifesto. Those of you who don't know the Agile Manifesto by heart, next time I meet you, I'm going to overhear you. I think, let's say, everybody in a management position who's leading Scrum or leading an Agile organization should have these norm systems in their mind. Well, Scrum came a long way. Ken is at the forefront of it, starterscrum.org, and it's very interesting to hear what developments are, what's going on, what's coming next. So please, a big hand, Ken. Share your ideas.
Let's see, is this working? Yeah? Good morning. I'm delighted you're here. How many of you are using Agile or Scrum? Excellent. As you know, it's not easy. You're creating a change. You're doing things differently. You certainly have a lot of evidence that this is a good thing, but that does not make it easy. You are trying to do something different. Rini and I were talking about, for instance, many of the people who run companies are managers, and managers manage things. Leaders cause change. And so you are in a leadership position. You may not have authority, but a lot of leaders have no authority. They have to make change happen by showing something that's good and helping people understand a better way of doing things. And so I congratulate you because I know this is not necessarily easy. And I'm delighted that you're doing this. What I'm very pleased to think of is that after years and years of doing this, we finally have Agile and Scrum processes being seen as the best way to do things, and Waterfall not being seen as a good approach. And that, I think, is a massive accomplishment for all of us. I'm going to talk today about a couple of things that may help you as you continue to lead, as you continue to help change happen, as you continue to help our profession become, a better one to work in and for our children to work in. So I'm going to talk about three questions, but first I wanted to introduce you to a quote from a famous American author and humorist, Mark Twain. Many people say, well, Scrum, interesting, what does it like? And this is a quote about what it feels like. If you want to understand what implementing Scrum and Agile processes in a company are, all you have to do is pick a cat up by the tail and try to carry it. It's a memorable experience. So 3 questions I'd like to answer, which may help. One is just how well is Agile and how well is Scrum helping software development? How many of you think that using Agile and Agile processes is better and your lives are better than before? How many don't know what I just said? Yours is worse? Yeah? No?
No, we haven't started yet, so I don't know.
Okay. And the question always is, well, yeah, it's better, but that's a qualitative statement. It's an opinion. So last year, there's a group in the United States called the Standish Group, which studies software development projects in IT. organizations. And they report on how successful they've been and how difficult of a time they've had. And then they try categorizing the reasons for their success or their difficulties. And for a number of years, they've been noticing Agile projects. They call them Agile. And they haven't really reported on them separately until last year, 2011, when they broke out success for Agile from traditional. And these are their statistics. If you're using a waterfall project approach, a process, 14% of the projects are successful. If you're using an Agile process, of which they say Scrum is 81% of the usage, 42% are successful. Let's see, that's 1, 2, 3 times more successful. And this is using the criteria that success is all of the requirements you stated at the start of the project are done by the anticipated time for the budgeted cost. And yet we know in an Agile project, a successful project is one that we stop after one iteration or one sprint because it's not going to work and we don't waste money. It's one where we deliver value rather than just the budgeted end date. And so many of our projects stop after 60% of the anticipated time with only the highest value functionality. And these projects in a waterfall project would be called challenged. In ours, they're called better. So these are both being measured by the same criteria. But we think Agile projects should be measured by different criteria. So successful, challenged, failed. If you look at the way we would view it, wow, that's 91% are successful, which is what I would expect. You're totally in control of the project, sprint by sprint by sprint. You manage the risk, you manage the sequencing of it, you manage the predictability of it. So 91%, sure, no problem. And this, the reason I like this is it is a quotable, referenceable set of statistics from a respected body in the software development industry. So it's no longer, oh yeah, we're doing better. It's, oh, we're doing at least 4 times better, but the way we measure it, we're doing 8 times better. Wow. So what's the second question that we want to talk about? How do we sell Scrum to management? Is anyone in here in management like myself? Good. So what I'd like to talk about is, for a moment, is why would it be so hard to sell Scrum to management? That is, those of you who are managers, what did it take to get you to think of this as a good thing? What was said to you that didn't seem very convincing? And for those of you that aren't managers, what difficulties did you have in trying to get Scrum, get Agile going in your company? So can you talk for like 3 minutes with your newly found friends who are sitting right next to you and talk about what you think about this while I get a glass of water? What do you think? How would you sell Scrum to someone, to management?
Well, the positive thing is that the users, the end users, would be very happy. So his population, of business population, will be very happy with it. So they will be very involved in the delivery cycle.
So get the users involved, get the customers involved.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
What do you think?
What I think is that it's important to find the first customers who are really interested in working together with you, because else you're just fighting it. But if you find the first customers working with you and be very open and transparent and involve them in a learning organization, then you can have very easy steps, and the fast feedback will give them, they know they can be in control, so that's very helpful.
Excellent. So someone who has an understanding or has a need.
Sorry?
Someone who has an understanding of what you're trying to do or has a need to do what you can give them.
Yeah, it's of course different whether you start the first teams or you started already, because
Yes.
once you started, it's very easy to bring them in and let the team talk to them and let other product owners talk. The first team or teams is the more harder part, and then you have to sit more together and be very open.
Right.
Yep.
Oh, back in the third row back. The bald person. Oh, that's half of us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Look next to you.
The way we started Scrum was by convincing our customer what the benefits would be for him. The customer went along with it.
Yeah.
We are doing Scrum several months now, and you see a bit of an oil spot spreading, because other people in our organization are asking, and can we please do the next project with Scrum?
So you've it's like eating an ice cream cone on a hot day. Other people see it and would like to do the same thing.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Good. So you set an example. Excellent. How about you? Yeah?
The way I convinced the management to start with Scrum was I asked, are we happy with the way we are doing projects now? And they said no.
Yeah.
I said, let's change then.
Want to try something different?
Yeah.
Excellent. So it wasn't even convincing. It was more like just saying, do you want to continue as is? I have something different we can try.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. Good. And in the back over there? Whoever sticks their hand up. Yes?
Yes, the most important thing I think is the involvement of the customer. They're sitting in the chair and steering the wheel, and that's how you get the results they want.
I like your answers. I tried a similar question with another group of people in Germany last week, and they told me all the reasons why they couldn't convince people to do this. And you instead told me how to do it. And that, of course, is an attitude needed for change, which is not to stand still and think about what you can't do, but to figure out what's possible and do it. So, congratulations. Big difference. To help you, Jeff and I wrote this book 3 months ago. Actually, started a year ago, but 3 months ago it came out. And it's called Software in 30 Days. As you can see, we had a subtitle, but the subtitle was only good for the United States. And it said, everyone is endowed by their creator with the rights for life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and software in 30 days or less. We found out that none of the other countries in the world use our Declaration of Independence, so we had to take that out. The book is meant for management, for your customers, and the intention of it is to, actually, we start by apologizing at how badly we have served them in the past. You know, it's not that we haven't worked hard, but the results have not been very favorable. So we start by trying to explain why that may have happened, and then we go into discussing how things have changed. But we actually start by saying, did you know that worldwide, many organizations are delivering quality, shippable, usable software in 30 days or less? And this is not something that is rare. This is something that is becoming commonplace, and it's becoming commonplace with your competitors. So if you don't actually start taking advantage of this competitive advantage, it is not going to be good for you. And if you want to take advantage of it, all you have to do is go down to your development organization and ask them to do it. This is very possible. This is no longer a rare skill. And so we try to make them aware of what this is, and then we give them some ideas about how to make this happen. So the book is structured like this: why the crisis happens, the solution, and then it says, here's how you can try it. You know, before you go down to the development organization, this is what you can say to them. This is how you can structure a pilot of something you can try yourself to see if it benefits you. If you think this is a good thing, these now are the things you have to do within the part of the organization that surrounds your development group to make this successful. So one of the things, of course, is don't believe that you can predict the future, but instead take advantage of knowing where you are frequently. So that's a shift in thinking that is, of course, necessary for intelligent management, and suddenly you have numbers to work with. And then we talk to them about a number of alternatives once they move on. The first, of course, we call PRN. That is, if you take aspirin, it always says take as needed, and that in Latin is pro nata, which means take as needed. So it means your organization may not be culturally ready for this, so only use this when you have critical projects or projects that have failed, and here is how you can do that. The next step that most organizations take is they try to change the organization. And that includes both helping everyone who wants to do this and the people who don't want to do this change. And that is very, very difficult. So the next one says, build a parallel organization. And there, do Agile development, iterative incremental development, use Scrum, tool it, set up the practices, the processes to support this type of work. And this is where you do work that you want to have more productive, higher quality, greater value. And the rest of the organization, leave it alone. Eventually, it may drain over to here, but don't worry about that. And the next one is an enterprise level. And as Jeff and I have talked about, most of the enterprises we work with, we help them become greatly successful. And by the way, that's not Jeff's or my doing. That is the hard work of the people in that organization. And they become a great place to work, a wonderful place to build products. But then management, based on their success, leaves. They're promoted. They can become part of the European Commission. And the organization kind of falls back because the organization never became agile. Instead, agility was imposed on its existing culture. So the last one is making this happen as a permanent change to an organization. And we've worked with several people on how to do that, and it is significantly different and significantly more of a commitment. So in the organizations that we set up in parallel, or as we go to change them, these are management responsibilities that we have. So these are management groups. So like you have functional management, you might have development management. We replace that with these actual types of management groups. And each one uses Scrum. Each one has metrics and accountabilities. So if things happen that you don't like, there's no one to say, well, I don't know why that happened. Instead, we know why it happened. And so the types of management are the people who develop software. These are our software developers. And guess what? They manage themselves. Neat. Value. How to create more value from the work that we do. That's the accountability of the product owners. Productivity and creativity, creating a place where people can be as creative and productive as possible. That's the responsibility of the Scrum Masters, another management role. Quality, that's the responsibility of the people maybe who were in functional groups before, or systems architects, database architects. They are now responsible for creating a quality organization and process by building frameworks, putting in the tooling to do continuous build, the tooling to do automated testing, all the standards, conventions, so that we are, as we develop software, cranking out high quality, high value software. Change, as I indicated, we're creating a lot of change. So this is another group of managers who are responsible for taking the impediments, the organizational values and structures that reflect the old way of thinking, and progressively, step by step, based on their significance and risk, changing them. And these are the management responsibilities that we found that are needed to transform an existing organization into an agile organization. Governance is the last one. How do we govern this? How do we manage risk? How do we manage predictability? All of those types of things. And all of these are transformational activities. This is what a traditional organization looks like. It's more, if you read the ideas about scientific management by Frederick Taylor, he described how to set up an organization for building, let's say, cars, toasters, ovens in high volume manufacturing. And that is the organization on the left. That is structured for high volume manufacturing. The organization on the right is very different. It's structured for creative development work, which is highly different from manufacturing because we only build one thing at a time. And everything is new and creative. So there again, we have the management responsibilities and the many Scrum teams actually doing the development. One of the issues we of course have in any organization is everyone wants to know what's going to happen to them. We're going to change. How do I pay for my vacation home? How do I continue to pay for my car? How do I keep my mistresses afloat? You know, so all those things need payment, and everyone wants to know. So we actually have devised a way in which we take people and show them where they belong. So here's the CIO, CTO. They're responsible for the change management process. Here is a functional manager. They're in change also. Wow, we had just put a product line manager there. Another product line manager goes into creating more value. Functional manager value. So everyone has a place. This is wonderful. And what this is doing for us is starting to answer the question of, we have a lot of people who are valuable. What work do we want them to do? Because the old work of managing the Gantt chart, telling people what to do and making sure they do it, is no longer there. And if we can't answer the question of where they go, they don't want to go. So that's what we're trying to do with this. So we've done very well. We've answered 2 questions. The next one is, how do we become more agile? So a question for you. Of course, I have a question for you. What is the purpose of Scrum? Why do you implement Scrum? Why is it even developed? So we say, oh, we want to use Scrum. What will that do for you? Does it, the moment you use Scrum, are you agile? Do you have higher value? Are the people happier? Does it do that all by itself? When you buy a chess game, and you've never played chess before, and you go to find someone to play chess with, and they've played chess before, does having bought the chess game make you a good chess player? No. It's something you can practice with and become a better and better chess player, but the degree to which you become a better chess player is totally up to you. Now, you might have thought that I was joking when I congratulated you when I got up here. I'm not. The work that you've done to become a better development organization, a better place to build products, is as a result of your hard work. And you used Scrum to do so. Management often wants to know how to manage this. That's their job, right? So you're going to bring in Scrum. It has an impact on the organization. How do we manage this? And managers like numbers. So saying to them, oh, this is better, or them saying to the board of directors, I think we're doing better, is not an adequate answer. So we're trying to set up, and this is what we're working on for the next several years, set up a framework for continuous improvement. This is just a quick picture of what Scrum starts doing. At the top is our traditional waterfall model, where we spend a lot of time planning. Then we, of course, lay out architectures and designs. We do some analysis. We then go into more detailed design, code. If we have time, we test. We sometimes document. Then we stabilize what we've done, and we ship. Sound familiar? Yeah. Might take 6 months, 9 months, 2 years, whatever, to get a release out the door. So with Scrum, it's just a framework also. we do all of that work that we did on the top in 30 days or less. So we just bring it down to 30 days or less. That's hard. If it was hard to do this in 18 months, it's harder to do it in 30 days. However, what happens is the moment you start reducing the cycle time down to 30 days, a couple of things happen. One, you're never risking more than 30 days worth of money. It's good, so your decisions don't have to be as perfect. The other thing that happens, though, Scrum uses lean principles throughout. Those are really good practices. Great lean principle is bottom-up intelligence. Another is eliminate waste, right? So you bring in all of your current work practices and you do them in 30 days or less, and a lot of things become very obviously wasteful. The analyst, business analyst, sits down and starts writing out a requirement. The designer and the programmer and the QA person say, that's pretty wasteful, why don't we just talk about it? We start building software and then we test it to see if it works. The QA person says, why don't I design the test and you can code something that satisfies the test, and then, well, of course it'll work. So it becomes a visibility, a transparency into an opportunity to continuously improve both the way we build software and the way we manage the results of the increments that come out of every sprint. So one of the primary benefits of Scrum is it's a tool that we can use to identify waste, to become more productive, to become more thoughtful, to apply our intelligence. Very frustrating to apply management skills when you don't know what's going on. Very satisfying to do so when you do know what's going on. So this, of course, makes the developers very satisfied because they actually know what they're doing and they're in control of it. It makes what we call the product owner very satisfied because they can control risk, they can create some predictability, they can avoid surprises. Those are very good. What about the rest of the managers? So this is an idea of a continuous improvement framework. When you first start using Scrum and you have your sprint, based on your past practices, you are at some degree of agility. You may have continuous builds, you may have close relationships with customers, you may have managers that are helping and improving things, or not, and they may be better or worse. But if this is a continuum from not very good to very agile, you fall somewhere in that category. And it's probably good to know where you fit, because based on where you fall into that category, some things to do are better to improve than other things. So good to know where you are. Actually, where you are is dependent on the practices that you use. So one practice is, of course, test first development. Another practice is managing risk every iteration. Another practice is dropping iteration length to control risk better. So these are all practices, not part of Scrum, but they're great practices. And so what we do is we bring in all of those management categories, and we identify all the practices in those categories that apply to agility. So the practices in developing software that apply to agility, like having a co-located, self-organizing team. The practices that apply to quality, like having standards and frameworks and architectures that everyone knows about. Like the practices that apply to value, like only building things that are high value that your customers want. So these are all practices. And what we found is the practices are not uniformly used. Some of them are used at one degree of agility, another degree of agility, another degree of agility, and there's actually some dependencies between them. You can't have test-first development until you have a QA person who understands it. You can't do that until you have an opportunity for automated testing. So there's a number of dependencies between these practices. And so what we found is there's an actual mapping of the degree of agility you have to the practices that you're employing. And as you use better and better practices, more improved practices, more modern practices, the productivity, quality, value goes up. And this is just a map of some of the practices and where they occur in each of those management categories related to the type of agility. So you can see changes from the retrospective implemented. Very important thing. Usually we find that when an organization has moved along from the very start of agility and they're becoming more agile. So that's maybe 20%, 25% of the way into becoming more agile. Management reporting structures, very initial. Career paths, very, very important, but usually doesn't happen till later. Sprint review being used effectively happens right off the bat. So this is just trying to take a small group of the total practices for quality, high-value product development and show a sequencing of them and where they might relate. Now, the reason why that's interesting is you can also take some metrics, and different metrics would apply to different stages of agility. If we are very, very agile, I would expect us to have very few defects. I would expect us to have a short stabilization phase. I would expect us to be able to turn around an enhancement, a request from a customer very rapidly. And so I would expect to see these metrics improve as we become more and more agile, as we apply more and more practices, as we go through more and more change. And so what that gives us is a mapping between our degree of agility, plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 20, the practices that we have spent money to implement, and the amount of benefits that we can measure that we're receiving for that effort. Does that make sense to you guys? 3 dimensions, often it's hard to explain one, but this is talking about the dimensionality of the benefits you receive to the effort you use to change things to improve the way you work. And what we found also with this is that there is a signature within each organization. So some organizations can't implement the practices to improve, and they get a lot of visible, manageable, quantifiable benefit. Other organizations may use a different pattern to implement those practices, some more, some slower, and they may receive different benefits. And so it's very interesting if one organization implements certain practices and another organization implements the same ones, and one organization gets 3 times the benefits. That certainly points out something worth investigating. What this is a framework for managing a path to agility. And Scrum is the tool, again a framework, that you use to get the information to do this management, to make this path happen, to apply the practices. This is my favorite graph because it is totally without basis. It's simply numbers that show that things get better, right? Remember we were talking about Scrum +1? That would be a point where you have implemented Scrum and you're starting to use some practices to improve use of Scrum better. So your definition of done would be better, your retrospective would be more effective, your sprint review would be more effective. And this was done with us by Capgemini as just a way of assessing which practices you're using at each stage of agility. And the first stage has more Scrum-type practices, so we're looking at that. And the way I liked it was presented was as a radar graph, showing the degree of dimensionality of the improvement in those types of practices at that stage. So it shows very visually what we expect as a totality of practices and our progress toward those practices. The same thing with the +2. That's where we're driving more technology. We do some technology practices in 0, +1. +2 is the home ground for significant technology improvement. And this is talking about the skills with test-driven development, acceptance test-driven development, continuous integration. And of course, with this practice also, so this is a set of practices or management area, this also would have its own radar graph where you could see how well it's progressing. So what I'm showing you are management tools. The first question we answered said, is Agile, is Scrum more effective than Waterfall? Answer is resoundingly yes. The second one says, is this something that can be managed? And the book that Jeff and I wrote is intended to help managers see how to cause this to happen within their organization. The third question for managers is, how do I manage this? The leaders have convinced me that this is a good thing to do. How do I progressively make this happen? How do I manage this change from where we were to where we're going to be? And how do I show the return on investment? Change costs money. Change is tumultuous. Change is difficult. What is the return? We can, of course, see it. All of you told me about the better experiences that you're having, or some of you did. Nice to be able to quantify, because managers need numbers to manage by. Now, a warning, of course, numbers aren't the whole story. Of course, you can make numbers say whatever you want. However, thank God, Scrum and Agile calls for transparency. So that means that if we're doing the right things, we might even have a metric for transparency, it says that all those numbers are reflecting what we're trying to do. And the end result of it is, of course, the organization's ability to deliver value, to achieve its mission, to deliver on what it intends to do. So those are the three things that I brought to you today, and I'm just trying to let you know that there are potentially more tools that you can use, both for doing this work as well as helping people who are managing understand their role in this type of work. Let's see. I think we had one other question. Not this one. So we had those questions. We've answered those questions. One more question. Is it true that I'm going on a sabbatical for 13 months? Yes, it is. We, together, have started creating a change. We together have started actually creating a different way in which people who do creative work are viewed in organizations and in which they're managed in organizations. Many organizations are doing well with this. Some are floundering, some are struggling. This is a massive change. This is almost to the same extent what we called the Industrial Revolution, except this time it's the creative revolution or the complexity revolution. I think that you are all doing very well. I think many of the other people, the thousands of other people we work with and talk with, are doing very well. So I'm going to take some time and think about what's next. You know, how do we, when this becomes more of a people thing and a cultural thing, what is the best way to make that shift? Here are some tools to do that, but I'm not convinced that in and of itself is adequate. So I'm going to take some time to think about it. I might also drink some beer, go bicycling, you know, whatever, but that's the intention. So no more classes for 13 months. Yay! And I want to applaud for you, because I know what you've been doing. I know it's not simple, and this is something we're doing together. And so thank you very much. You know, this is really good.
This video blog is sponsored by Awareness.